From the heart of the Silicon Valley, welcome to another Tech Closeup. I'm Mark Albertson. From our familiar surroundings of the Tech Museum of San Jose, California. You know, the Silicon Valley is certainly the world's capital of innovation, but it's not just where all these techie new products are born. It's also where you're bound to find a lot of brainy human software that thinks those great ideas up. And that's what Tech Closeup is all about. In this month's program, we'll see how new firearm sensing devices help fight crime in local communities across the United States. We'll meet a professor who's bringing classical music into the computer age. And Christina King profiles recent tech award winners who've been moving in very fast circles. You know, in many American cities, gunfire is a sad reality. In fact, unless police were just lucky enough to be on the scene just as it happened, it could take them a few risky and dangerous minutes to respond. Well, new technology developed by a Silicon Valley company is not only able to hear and pinpoint where gunfire occurred, but help police get on the scene almost immediately. And that is having a major impact on safety and peace of mind. The sounds of the city sometimes sound like this. Sound like gunfire? Technology called ShotSpotter confirms it's gunshots, the rapid fire of a drive-by shooting.
Those noises were in fact from a drive-by shooting, and the ShotSpotter system was able to tell police dispatchers how fast the car was moving, on what street the car was moving, its precise location, and that there were in fact two people shooting.
At its headquarters near Santa Clara, California, ShotSpotter makes sensors that listen for gunfire and record any gunshots. And even map out right where the guns went off.
So after 10 years, we have 16 systems out there in major metropolitan areas and actually some smaller areas across the United States.
And so, as soon as police hear this noise, instead of getting a vague report from a well-meaning citizen, they get a precise report from ShotSpotter much, much faster.
From rooftops or telephone poles, ShotSpotter sensors now perch over high crime cities like Oakland, California, a city that often records over 100 gunshot killings a year.
A system like this, it's always vigilant. It's there. It's 24 hours a day. It doesn't get tired. So it offers tremendous benefits, and I think everybody's really optimistic that this system will help.
It could help save police from a wild goose chase. People who hear shots may call 911, but they can't pinpoint where the shots went off. Well, ShotSpotter can.
On average, we're finding that 911 calls usually come in 2 to 3 minutes after ShotSpotter has detected gunfire and is already sending officers to the scene. So the ability to apprehend suspects is greater.
ShotSpotter is a special computer system. It's programmed to recognize a unique electronic signature, the fingerprint of gunfire. So it filters out other sounds like helicopters and firecrackers. Those sounds never travel as far as gunfire. So when a network of sensors records the same sound across a 2-mile stretch,
Gunfire can travel between 1.5 miles and 2 miles, whereas other noises like pile drivers, hammers, even fireworks barely travel 3/4 mile. So because gunfire travels twice as far, we use the distance that it travels as part of our filtering technique.
satellite map technology lets ShotSpotter not only record guns, it helps police mark right where the guns were fired.
But when they zoom in on the map, they can tell responding officers quite literally what building to go look at. And so as we zoom all the way in here, you can see that this gun battle was taking place across this wide avenue, that the gunfire was started on the right-hand side of the street and ended on the left-hand side of the street, and that this is what it sounded like.
That level of accuracy even helps soldiers who wear portable shot spotters to listen for snipers.
Because you know where the good guys are and you know where the bad guys are, and you don't mistakenly return fire to a location where the good guys are.
The fact is, ShotSpotter maps paint a deadly picture. Red dots track the history of gun crime. They help police focus manpower where it's needed most.
And we're finding that a very high percentage of the gunfire is not even being reported via 911. So what the system is enabling us to do is look at concentrations, where's gunfire most prevalent in the city, and send our resources there to address it.
Many police departments now credit ShotSpotter with a sharp drop in gun crime. It seems the word's out that if you fire a gun, somehow the cops know just right where you are.
Hopefully over time, as word gets out that this system's in place and people begin to go to jail based on our response to the system, I think it has tremendous potential to reduce gunfire.
Sometimes there's actually people that are wounded that our system has been able to save lives because people have been hit, and the officers get there in time to call for ambulances and other type of support.
ShotSpotter is not perfect. It can't record guns fired indoors, like in houses or parking garages. But most gunfire happens outside, where ShotSpotter hears it, and soon satellite cameras may let police see it too.
If you look at London, I think they've got an average of 7 cameras on every block. Now, I don't know if that's where we want to go as a society, but the potential is there to link to visually capture these incidents almost instantaneously.
9/11 triggered a wave of new technologies to prevent terror and fight crime. That high-tech wave fuels the ShotSpotter, an electronic tool to keep an ear on crime and an eye on public safety.
What we found is almost 50% of gunfire events, and this is what our customers tell us, actually go unreported. And when they install a ShotSpotter system, they truly find out how much gunfire violence they have in their city.
You say you'd give your right arm to be there for your family? Here's your chance to prove it. Have your blood pressure checked and control it to lower your risk of heart attack and stroke.
Every year, the folks here at the Tech Museum in San Jose, California, hold a special awards ceremony to honor those great innovators who dream up technologies to change the world. Well, this year's Tech Awards were even more significant, thanks to a visit from a little technology company called Microsoft. Here's Christina King.
All under one roof today, we have people from across the country who are making a difference using technology. From one couple, for example, who makes sure that doctors in the far corners of the world are educated on the latest science. Another man uses cameras to allow people in villages in India and many other places tell stories about their neighborhoods.
They call their service video volunteers.
Video volunteers is really about first of all, giving people a voice that they've never had. There are 4 billion people on Earth that earn less than $4 a day. They neither have the right to speak or be heard.
The company is rapidly creating a global network of video producers in rural villages.
So we create community video units in the developing world of 5 to 10 people, of which 50% are women. We train them to write, shoot, produce, edit their own monthly cable TV program.
నా పేరు విశ్వమ్మ, నా వయసు 17 సంవత్సరాలు. ఇంతకు ముందు వ్యవసాయం చేసేదాన్ని. ప్రస్తుతం నేను మన్యం ప్రజా వీడియోలో విలేకరుగా పనిచేస్తున్నాను.
The idea is to arm remote villages such as this one in India with information. The media technology helps them spread news about health, human rights, and other important ideas. It's just one of more than a dozen tech laureates here who are reaching out to developing countries.
The examples of how technology is making a difference in this world are everywhere here today. Come over here. This is one that I find really interesting. It's called Medical Missions for Children, and what they do is use technology to match doctors in developing countries with specialists elsewhere so they can help them treat their most difficult cases and keep them up to date on the latest science.
We start saying to ourselves, wow, you know, suppose we could make this doctor in the underserved hospital smarter and raise the level of medical expertise in that hospital, we could help a ton of people. They could help themselves, actually.
Frank Brady and his wife started Medical Missions for Children in 1999. They knew immediately they could have an impact on the medical disparity of knowledge in the world.
And we actually started doing telemedicine, where doctors here from 28 different mentoring hospitals would help kids that were in underserved countries who had diseases that they couldn't explain, you know, that were difficult to diagnose. And we were doing a lot of those diagnostic consults, and so far we've done about 23,000 some odd of them.
And saved thousands of lives in the process. Saving lives is what Andrea Coleman wanted to do when she started Riders for Health.
When we first visited Africa, we realized that there are health resources, but there's no way of them actually reaching rural communities on a regular and predictable basis because the infrastructure for managing transportation is so weak.
That's why Riders for Health steps in to train professional health workers in Africa and give them skills to drive and maintain vehicles. That way they can get to remote patients who have no access to health care. It's a case of the good old-fashioned combustion engine changing healthcare a world away. Using technology to benefit humanity is what the annual awards are all about. Imagine the surprise in the room when Microsoft's Bill Gates showed up.
It's really about the laureates and it's about the program. It's not about him. It's about the people who make good happen with these kinds of social philanthropic causes. So I think he's here more than anything to shine a bright light to the best he can, given his position on the program, on the laureates, and on the award.
Careful not to overshadow the other laureates, Gates stayed only long enough to learn about a few of the innovations. But he himself is one of them. The museum named him Global Humanitarian of the Year. One of the award winners Gates learned about created a unique technology that could drastically reduce the number of worldwide AIDS deaths. Point Care Technologies developed a portable instrument called Orica and heat-resistant reagents to do on-the-spot tests of HIV patients. Now, those in far-out regions can get their T-cell counts and safely mail out samples to faraway labs and doctors. Peter Hansen is Point Care's Chief Science Officer.
Shipping is a real problem all over the developing world, and most of the chemical reagents that you need for medical tests die in shipment from the heat. So we developed reagents here that need no cold chain for shipping. They can stand 110 degrees storage for a year. Nothing happens to them.
Not just health, but water took center stage in the Tech Awards this year. One company actually uses a greenhouse to distill seawater in hot, arid countries. Not to get too technical, Charlie Payton says the process is really very simple.
It's exactly the same as if you have a hot shower in a bathroom, then you get condensation on the mirror or on the window. And we're making fresh water exactly the same way as that.
The water is used in growing food that otherwise would never be available in such arid climates. Similarly, the company FogQuest developed a way to capture healthy water.
And the process is really simple. The wind blows the fog over the mountain. We put a mesh up that collects the droplets, and I'll show you how that works. If you imagine what's coming out of this spray bottle are very, very tiny droplets of water. You can't even see them. And yet the mesh converts them to these very large drops, which go down into a trough. The water runs down through a pipeline and into a big cistern in the village.
The technologies are bringing hope. This is a PC that can be set up practically anywhere, even in the desert.
So first we have our Desert PC. So this is the actual PC system. It's a solid state system in that it is built with flash memory. It is using a very highly efficient CPU that actually can run off a car battery.
Wayne Voda's IESC Geek Corps, he calls it, is giving radio stations in Mali, West Africa, access to information using his unique computer setup. Geek Corps is changing the living standards of the Mali people.
There's actually Peace Corps for the geeks. and we actually use volunteers in addition to our paid staff to develop new and interesting ways for economic development in the developing world. That is, ways to create income, jobs, and new businesses using technology.
Access to information and good health care. Many of us take them for granted, but not innovators like these. They continue to develop new ideas, bridging the divide and helping people live better, longer lives. For Tech Closeup, I'm Christina King.
It's all about how you look today on Fast Forward. And to talk about the latest in the industry trend of personalizing your PC by painting it is Rob Enderle, our noted industry expert. And Rob, these are some beautiful looking computers. I can't believe what people are willing to spend to personalize their PC.
They're willing to spend a lot of money.
Let's take a look.
We'll start with some of the stuff that the manufacturers themselves are doing. This is the kind of famous Acer Ferrari notebook computer. It's actually on the line. They've got Ferrari technicians that make sure it's the proper color of red. That make sure it's the right one. Yeah, Ferrari red. Make sure the sticker's in the right place. Make sure it meets Ferrari standards. Pretty cool. We moved to something that's about $1,000. This was done with in conjunction with Lance Armstrong and Hewlett Packard. It's got his brand on the top. And then then inside, it's got a yellow motif plus a signature. This is actually printed on, Lance's signature is actually printed on the device. The next series of boxes are all painted by Smooth Creations, which is a painting shop up in Portland, Oregon. They do very nice work. But if you look, this case started out being jet black. They painted, at my request, a Battlestar Galactica theme on the side of this.
I was going to say, it looks kind of Darth Vader-ish.
It does, but you see how they did the scoops. Now when this thing powers up, these scoops actually light up.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Which is pretty cool. And but you notice it's automotive quality paint.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
And look at the depth. I mean, it really looks like this is etched inside, but it's all done with paint. So the next one over, I just had this done. This is a brand new XPS 12-inch screen notebook. This is a brand new process. This actually has something that looks like carbon fiber embedded into the screen.
You know what it looks like? One of those Etch-a-Sketch, kind of.
Well, kind of, sort of.
I mean, it's so cool.
Actually, they pulled theme elements off the desktop and kind of updated it for this particular box. But if you can see, it just glistens when you look at it. This typical notebook typically has a Dell that sits right here in the middle. It's kind of a black. It's nondescript, but with this paint job, it really pops and it stands out. Now, this is probably the most spectacular. It's also the most expensive to do. This is color morphing paint. This is on a Sony laptop computer. And the amazing thing about this is when this thing sold, they no longer import it in the United States. It sold for $3,000.
You're kidding.
And then if you wanted it in graphite, it was $4,000. So it was not inexpensive.
See, it morphs color. I mean, it changes.
It's color morphing paint.
It's purple, and then it's kind of greenish, depending on where you are.
The paint came out for automobiles, and so you actually get car. In fact, my wife wants to have her car painted with the same paint. Very expensive to do, and the thing is the paint costs about $600 a quart. So to paint a car is very expensive. But since this uses a fraction of a quart, to paint a notebook computer, it's not that much more expensive than using one of these other paints, and you get this incredibly unique finish. And as I say, they were able to actually put my company logo in near the bottom, so it not only stands out, it provides a great presence for the firm.
A little plug for Rob.
Yeah,
well,
a little
Rob,
plug for me.
Thank you so much for educating us on these most unique computers. And if you want to find out the companies' names that are doing this unique painting, all you have to do is log on to techcloseup.com and check it out. It's pretty cool.
That's what he got. Got a 28-year-old black male, got 3 gunshot wounds in the chin. One upper chin.
There are 2 paths a child can take. For over 25 years, we've been helping children choose the right one. Communities and schools, helping kids stay in school and prepare for life.
If you love classical music, then you're sure to love Beethoven or Brahms or Mozart. They each had their own unique, incredible, and memorable styles, at least until now. There's a pioneering professor at a university in Santa Cruz, California, who's developed software that composes music as if Mozart was right at the keyboard. Here's Christina King with a tale of 2 symphonies.
Here at this recital hall on the campus of the University of California, Santa Cruz, the classical greats like Mozart and Bach are sung here by choirs and played by orchestras all the time. And thanks to the pioneering efforts of one professor here, those greats are still writing for performances.
Like this piano concerto, for example. It sounds like a Mozart piece, and even the most trained classical musician has identified the master as its author. Many composers are shocked to learn that this was created by a computer. UCSC music professor David Cope is the mastermind behind this computer program that has written thousands of published compositions. They're pieces that a trained ear would instantly attribute to any one of the great classical composers. Professor Cope says he got the idea for the program 16 years ago. A writer's block had paralyzed him, and he worried he would not be able to finish an opera he was paid to compose.
I simply couldn't write that opera. I couldn't figure out why C sharp was any different or better than C natural. I just had, nothing came to me.
At the time, Cope had developed an interest in computers, something many of us didn't all know much about then. But Cope was hooked.
And I said, you know, what if I could create a program that would create Bach chorales and Cope and Stravinsky and Mozart and anybody? And the only way I could think of doing that was to create a program that was built around a database of music. Let's say I had a database of Bach chorales, all 371 of them, and I had a little program that was sat on top of this, the smallest program I could make, that would analyze that music and then create a new Bach chorale that wasn't one of the Bach chorales that was in the database, but sounded like them all.
If he could do that, he thought, Cope could perhaps feed his very own music into the computer, and it would create brand new compositions he might never have thought up by himself.
Could I write a program that was adaptable enough that it could write Bach from a Bach database, Cope from a Cope database, Mozart from a Mozart database? And so I set about working on it, and I spent about 2 years really working on a program that could do that.
After several years of mostly self-taught computer programming and gazing at the view outside his Santa Cruz office window, Cope came up with his virtual music program he called EMI, or Experiments in Musical Intelligence.
Computers add and subtract, that's all they do. They're sophisticated tools. Maybe not a shovel, but certainly like about the level of a car, a nice, really good car. And they've got a purpose. They've simply got to get you to that place or dig that hole. But ultimately, it is a person who writes all the rules and all the instructions. And so I tell that story to people who have this sort of what I call computer phobia. And I tell them that, you know, for heaven's sakes, the computer's not doing anything but following my instructions. A human being has just as much a part of this act as any composer did writing a piece of music in the past.
To some, it was almost like bringing the greats, Bach, Mozart, and many others, back to life.
I immediately put some Mozart in. Out popped a Mozart sonata movement that was scary. I remember shouting into the CPU, "Are you in there, Wolfie?" Because I thought this was, somebody was faking this. I mean, I couldn't believe that this program was doing these kinds of things.
I asked Professor Cope to show me another example of his EMI program at work. He chose Bach as an example.
This is the real Bach, the real McCoy.
Now, how about the computer's creation of a Bach-inspired piece? How does the program recognize what a composer's real style is and then replicate it?
Well, I think music consists of two particularly important elements. One is a series of constraints, which my program adopts from the music that's in its database. But something more, there's something more about style. And style, as I define it from my project, is all that's in common between two different pieces by the same composer.
Initially, some of Cope's contemporaries were not impressed with his using history's classical composers as his subjects.
What I got was stunned silence, first of all. And then the panel, of which I was one of the speakers, started speaking. And one of the speakers in particular became really annoyed, very angry, and stood up and started speaking in German, a language that I'm not particularly proficient in, and raised his fist to the audience and bellowed and so forth, and then turned around to me, stuck his finger against my nose, which was rather, because he was a large man, and said the words, "Music ist tot," which I didn't know the meaning of. Music is dead.
After several more years, Cope stopped using his Emmy program on historically identifiable music.
The only thing about it that's a little disturbing to people is that a program like this is an indefatigable font of new music. In other words, you can bury Bach. On my website is 5,000 Bach chorales in MIDI format.
When in reality he did how many?
371.
Okay.
I could have put 10,000, 20,000, 200,000, not one of them the same as any other one in the group. I have not heard most of those chorales. They're statistically correct, they're right, they're good Bach chorales even though I haven't heard them. They're all up there. You know, if people took them all seriously, you know, maybe people wouldn't want to listen to the real thing anymore.
Now, Cope wanted his program available to all musicians and composers to use their own past works to help them come up with new ideas.
There's only one Mozart opera. There's only one opera by Mahler, even though Mahler never wrote an opera. This is an opera by Mahler, by Emmy, by me, by the computer, by all these various things. And as confusing as it all is, I'm hoping that in the next 20 years or so that the music will catch on with some people. But I think it will catch on in part because it's rare now. It's something it's historically interesting because there's no more of it being made and no chance of any more of it being made. No chance.
Cope has written 5 books on experiments in musical intelligence. Oh, and he did eventually finish that opera 7 years late.
The commissioner was very unhappy, but has somehow kept his patience for 7 years. And the opera was written in 2.5 days by my computer program, produced about a month later to the best reviews I'd ever received for any work I'd ever done.
But many would agree, a sound like this is worth waiting for. For Tech Closeup, I'm Christina King.
You know, this world of ours is so full of incredible, innovative technology, and that's what keeps us busy here at Tech Closeup. You can keep up too. You'll find a list of all the channels that carry Tech Closeup and what time they carry it on our website, techcloseup.com. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mark Levinson, and remember, if you want to stay close to all the technologies in this incredible high-tech world of ours, well then join us next time for another edition of Tech Closeup.